Hour two, Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. You didn't get the music that time if you're listening on the internets, but I was jamming, and then I forgot which buttons to push to get us back and onto the air once again.
Minor technicality.
I know. Have you seen Vision Quest, by the way, Vince? Someone was asking.
Chris I saw that.
In the YouTube chat.
So the issue has been I haven't been able to find it, but I just looked it up, and it is on Prime Video. And so I'm about to have some extended time on the couch here coming up. And I think that's going into the getting on my dance card. I think that's going to be on the dance card finally.
Know someone who's got the DVD if you don't want to pay for it.
That's fair. It Prime Video, it's part of the subscription. So
by the way, I told my wife about the fact that you have never tasted a pumpkin roll, and she apparently feels sorry for malnourished middle-aged Italian men, and it sounds like you could have some pumpkin rolls coming your way in the future.
So fantastic! I'll meet you wherever.
Do your kids like pumpkin? Like how into pumpkin?
I think some could take it, some could leave it. I think though there will be some. I will have to guard them. I
was going to say you're going to have to make sure that you give yourself an adequate supply.
100%.
We were talking about the pumpkin rolls last week, not to get totally sidetracked, but as we get into rapid fire and more important stuff. But so it was like after the show Wednesday night, and I told my wife, I mentioned pumpkin rolls, and she said, I didn't make any pumpkin rolls. And everyone in the family gave her the look like, what? And she ended up staying up for an extra 2 hours to bake the bread, roll the bread out, cool it off, and she made pumpkin rolls. So we were all very thankful for Stacy.
She thought she was able to get away with it, huh?
I know.
Wow.
A lot of good stuff. Okay. The subplot to Notre Dame's win over Stanford, of course, was the unfortunate injury to Jeremiyah Love. He suffered bruised ribs in the first quarter, and I've got to get the cut up here. I just realized I've done all this different talking, and we are going to hear from Jeremiyah Love before we hear from Marcus Freeman. But Love bruised his ribs when he took a knee from Stanford linebacker Wilfredo Aybar while being tackled in the first quarter. Here is Jeremiyah Love on that injury.
So initially, I think the guy just fell on my ribs, like bruised it. Went into the tent. I felt like I was good immediately, but they wanted to make sure I was good, so they took me back to do extra just tests. Everything came out right. Just a bruise, but I felt good immediately after. They looked at me and all that type of stuff. Just had to build up back my confidence to go out there and hit or get hit. Confidence built back up and just felt good.
Okay, so there's Jeremiyah Love. Of course, he did come back into the game. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But do you think the Wilfredo Aybar knee to the ribs of Jeremiyah Love was a dirty play, Vince?
It's tough because we're kind of talking intent here. I felt like the tackle itself looked awkward and that he did not have to put his knee down where he did. And then I felt like he left it there longer than it needed to be. It didn't look good to me. It didn't look like a natural tackle.
Especially after three other guys had taken him to the ground and he's laying on his back on the ground.
It did not feel natural to me. So, I hate to throw that label on this guy, but it didn't look natural.
And that, like, if you just watch it, it doesn't look, like you said, first and foremost, I agree with what you're saying. It doesn't feel natural. It also didn't look like a particularly hard hit, but at the same time, like, this is a man who is like 260-ish pounds or something
probably,
like that. And he is coming down with his knee, and it just feels like with Love already on the ground to make Love, like when he tried to sit up, like he looked like he was in some serious pain, the way he kind of like clinched over as they sat him up on the ground. And it's like, oh no, man.
I know.
Like, are his ribs fractured? Are you kidding me?
I was worried about literally every injury possible
at
that point. And
I know.
And just so you know, that particular young man is 6'2", 270 pounds.
There you go.
So
there you go.
Yeah.
So to me, for Love to have felt for it not to be a rib fracture and to have felt that kind of pain from that knee, he had to have been coming down with some force on Jeremiyah Love, unnecessary force,
Yeah.
I think, because again, he was already on the ground. And when you look at it and when you look at the injury that Love suffered, it felt like there was some kind of intent. And I mean, this is not Jeremiyah Love whining and complaining, but at different points during the season, when he has been asked by the media, he has said, like, guys are doing stuff to him, like going for his knees, going for his ankles, holding on, twisting and turning down there to try to take him out of the game.
Sure.
They want him out of the game.
He's the best player.
I would not put it past Aybar, like nothing that he has done specifically, but just watching that play. And again, for that knee to have caused that kind of pain to Jeremiyah Love, it was much more than just a glancing blow. I do think that there was some intent behind it.
Yeah, I agree. I hate to think ill will on people, but the proof's in the pudding, man. Like it just was not a natural looking play at all.
No, not at all. Not at all. So here's Marcus Freeman after the game on the Love situation.
It was, I went out there and they said, you could tell he was hurting and, hey, I think it's a rib injury. And so we're going to get it checked out. We're going to x-ray it. And they went and did that. And they came back and said, hey, he's going to try to give it a go. And he gave it a go and you could tell he was hurting. And that was probably close to the end of the half. And then again, I just had that conversation with him and I just explained to Mike, just, hey, if you can help us and this is what's best for the team, you make that decision.
All right. Thoughts on that, Vince?
It was interesting that he said this at halftime, I believe, is that he wanted to let Jeremiyah Love make the decision on his own, if he wanted to come back. And now, obviously, that's after the doctor said that there's nothing wrong with him, right? And it's just like pain management kind of a situation, that if he wanted to play, he could play. We all know that he was playing because there was stuff on the line. It wasn't that game that was on the line. There were career opportunities on the line. And if I'm Jeremiyah Love and I'm the competitor that I believe that he is, he wants to come back in the game. I have no problem with that. I really don't. There was a lot of outrage. People were like, oh, why'd they put him back in? They've got to protect him. They got to do this. They got to do that. There's also a thing called a relationship that you have with a player, and you don't want to lose that trust and that relationship with a player over a situation like this. He had a bruised rib. Like the other ones were in. It's not just about Jeremiyah Love.
I mean, these guys have bumps and bruises all the time.
100%.
Like they x-rayed him. There was no evidence of any kind of fracture or anything.
Correct.
That's the first thing they did, and probably their biggest concern was that he broke his ribs. And if he had broken his ribs, I don't think he would have come back in the game. But the fact that it was just a bruise, now, like he wanted to be in there, he wanted to help the team. I think that he did, want to like had things like Heisman and the records and stuff like that in his sights. But it's a bruise. He didn't necessarily run like he was, overly anxious to be taking any hits in the midsection after that.
And that's fair because it probably hurt,
that's not a pejorative. I'm just saying,
yeah, for sure.
I wouldn't want to take that either, but at the same time, he was out there, so I don't have any problem with them putting him back out there, considering they did x-rays. The medical staff, the athletic training staff did what they were supposed to do. They made the evaluations. They went to the degree that you're supposed to. There was nothing broken, which meant it was a bruise. So they put him out there. So I've got no problem with that. The rest of the starters were out
exactly.
There.
That's the key. That's the key. Like if you wanted to rest people for the playoffs, then you take everybody out. This isn't just a Jeremiyah Love conversation. This is a team conversation.
Right.
If you want to rest people, then you take everybody out. It's not just your starting running back. And if the ones are out, he's healthy to play. Hey man, you want to go back in? Cool. Go back in. Like I really don't have an issue with it. There was no structural damage. There was no anything. And so if he wants to go back out there, he can go back out there. So touche to him.
I concur. So Love, after the game, he finished with 66 rushing yards and a touchdown on 14 carries. Most of that came on the first drive of the game before he suffered that injury, with his lone touchdown that set the single season touchdown record at Notre Dame, surpassed Jerome Bettis. And Love was asked to make his final Heisman Trophy pitch after that injury-shortened game against Stanford.
I told him.
Oh, sorry. Wrong cut. There we go.
Yeah. Not really.
Vince. Those nights.
Oh, is that not the right one?
No, there were 2 cuts with Heisman. Here we go.
Okay.
This is the one. Let me make sure. Yes, last Heisman pitch.
I just say what I always say. If you're looking at me, evaluating me, man, I'm a team player. I want the best for my guys. I'm the type of player that elevates everybody else around me. I don't really focus on individual things really a lot because at the end of the day, I feel like I believe that nothing is done by yourself. Everything is a credit to your team, your coaches, and stuff like that. So if I'm going to say something to them, I'm a team first type of guy, and I elevate people around me to do better.
All right, so there is Jeremiyah Love. That is his final Heisman Trophy pitch. What do you think on the pitch, first of all, Vince?
I think he comes from the Marcus Freeman school of I'm not going to pitch for myself. Because
stop being so self-deprecating.
Yeah, he does not want to talk about himself at all. He's just not that
You're
kind of guy.
Monster. Come on.
Yeah, right? He does not want to talk about himself. And you know what? That's an endearing quality for him.
It's tough to do. It's tough for a lot of people to talk about themselves.
Look, he let his play do the talking. He struck a Heisman post twice. Like, that's his talk. That's all that you need to see. And we'll see what the voters end up doing. It's very interesting to me that really the 3 top Heisman options, 4, I guess, if you want to include Pavia, they're all in the Midwest. And they vote by region. And so who knows what the Midwest region is going to look like when it comes to voting. But then what's the East, the South, the West? Like, what does that look like? Because none of them have really a legitimate contender in the mix. And that's not usually the case. That with the South and the West and the East not having a contender, that's where it's going to come down to.
The other 2 quarterbacks don't have any more impressive numbers than Jeremiyah Love.
Agreed.
You're comparing quarterbacks to running backs. And, Jeremiyah Love can't help the injury. He was injured and he was limited. And then it turned into a blowout and there was no reason to have him in the game. I mean, obviously what everyone was hoping was that Love is out there on the field for most of the first half. He busts off a couple big runs like he always does. He has over 150 yards and 2 or 3 touchdowns, and you call it a day. It's like he's got all these school records. He makes his final case for Heisman, and he walks off the field, and that's it. It didn't go that way. The fact that he was injured, though, doesn't take away from the fact that, again, he had 4 yards on the first drive alone and the first touchdown of the night before the injury. So, the fact that he was injured doesn't take away from Jeremiyah Love's greatness. It doesn't take away from the fact that he is still the best player in college football. It takes away from none of that. You just didn't get the highlight stuff to go with it, and that could impact the voting ultimately. But the other 2 guys, like most quarterbacks, most not all, but the other 2 guys, Mendoza and Sayin, are predominantly there because of the fact that they are the quarterbacks of 2 teams that are undefeated and are going to play in the Big Ten championship game this weekend.
Right. Yep. Absolutely agree. And our boy Robert McCall says Carson Beck should win the Heisman. He's number 1 in TDs in the last 30 seconds of every game.
Yeah,
it's fair. It's going to be interesting.
Are his Heisman hopes still alive? Do you think he has a legitimate chance to win it?
Yeah, they're alive. You can't pin the Heisman Trophy on the last game of the season against a terrible football team. It's what he's done all season. And he did set, the all-time touchdown, record for Notre Dame, running backs. That's big. That's massive. Somebody said that, Mendoza and Love are the only ones that set school records. The bar wasn't set terribly high at IU. Okay. They've been playing a long time, but before last year, they were the worst football team in college football all time. The worst. And so the bar wasn't set super high.
There have been a lot greater running backs that come through Notre Dame compared to quarterbacks who have gone through Indiana all time.
Right. You're talking about former Heisman Trophy winners. You're talking about Jerome Bettis, Vegas Ferguson. Like, you're talking about some legit people that
Ricky
he was passing, to get these awards. Like,
Reggie
Brooks. Completely different situation. So is he going to win? I'm not going to say that. but I will also say he still has a chance. He's still going to get invited to New York.
Darius Walker.
Just yeah, you could just go down the line, man.
Rattling
Like,
off the top of my head.
yeah.
Some greats who have come through Notre Dame. Vince, did you watch Jack White at halftime of the Lions-Packers game?
I did not.
Okay, so come on, Vince.
Halftimes for bathroom breaks and filling up on food. All right.
Open your mind one of these days. Listen to music.
Music is a broad term.
Fill in the blank. The way ESPN and its Game and Answers handled the Notre Dame versus Miami head-to-head debate over the weekend is blank.
I've been thinking about this one for a little while. It's just, I don't want to say unprofessional because it's not like they're being unprofessional. It's lazy. It's a lazy take that's out there for clicks. That's the thing for me. I'm embarrassed for them. Like, do they go home and look in the mirror and they're like, man, I made a really good argument on the air today? Or is it like, man, I wish we could stop talking about Notre Dame and Miami? You know, I just, is this something coming from on high that they have to talk about? I mean, obviously they've got, you know, the graphics and all of those things like ready to go. So they know that they're going to talk about them. It's just, it's such a tired argument that I'm very surprised that they're just still hammering home with it. It's a tired, lazy argument.
And again, you know, like before the Lane Kiffin stuff happened, it's really been the only argument that they've had, and they've beaten it just into the ground. What I think was the most, you know, again, you know, like disappointing, maybe that's like Bob Wischusen was calling the Miami Pitt game. And I don't know, like, I know you said you watched that game. I don't know how much you were listening to them. Like, did you notice the multiple times that he went in? Like he made the snide remarks about Miami having the head-to-head win.
Oh yeah.
Notre Dame.
All the time.
Yeah. Well, guess what? Turns out Bob Wischusen is a Boston College graduate.
Huh.
Well, like, do you think he's got, you know, an axe to grind against Notre Dame? And then Dave Fleming, who was calling the Notre Dame game, and, you know, like we all know what that second half turned into with the, you know, I know like people are talking about the Andrew Love Fest. You know, let's not talk about the team that is most likely going to the playoffs. Let's talk about the one celebrity standing on the sideline who's not even a coach. He's the general manager. You know, like it all got about that, but they also, you know, like they were beaten into the ground. The fact that Marcus Freeman had left the starters out there a little bit, him and Brock Osweiler, and then they got into the whole Miami Notre Dame thing. And that's really where I had to hit the mute button because it's freaking 1:30 in the morning. And we've been hearing it all weekend long. And now I've got to watch the Notre Dame game and I've got to hear these doofuses talk about it too. Like, just call the game, you know, call the game that's in front of you. Don't let your narrative get in the way of the game that is actually in front of you. That, by the way, more Notre Dame people have tuned in to see than anybody else at that time of night, right?
Correct.
Like, well, it turns out that Dave Fleming, who was doing the play-by-play for ESPN, a Stanford grad.
There we go.
A double. He had both an undergrad and a master's from Stanford. So, like, you've got two guys calling these games, and it's like they're beating these narratives, and it's obviously not just them. It is just so tired. And I've already talked about, you know, like Ari Wasserman, like that whole thing. It's like, get off it, get over it. It's happening. And nothing that you're going to say is going to change that at this point.
Nope.
The committee has told you what they think about Notre Dame. They have told you what they have thought about Miami week after week after week. And this is not the precedent. The precedent was set 4 years ago when Michigan State beat Michigan and then lost to Purdue the next week. And then 2 weeks later, Michigan, despite the fact that they lost the head-to-head to Michigan State, was ranked ahead of Michigan State in the college football playoff rankings. That's the precedent. They set the precedent 4 years ago, but none of these rubes want to talk about that. All they want to do is hit a lazy narrative.
And it is so lazy because not once in any of these arguments do I hear about Miami's losses. Do I hear about the fact that they lost to two unranked teams?
Right.
Not once do I ever get to hear about that. You know, not once when we're talking about Texas do we get to hear about the fact that they got beat by Florida, who just announced a brand new head coach. You don't get to hear about any of that kind of stuff. It's just whatever fits their narrative. And the only thing that fits the Miami narrative is that they won the head-to-head. Congratulations. You won the head-to-head. That's part of the argument. It's just not the only part of the argument. That's the thing. It's not the only argument. There are other pieces to the argument that you have to take into consideration, and nobody wants to do that. That's the problem, except for the committee. And at the end of the day, the committee is the only one that matters.
Josh says the ESPN crew was awful, but what else are you going to talk about in a blowout? Well, for one thing, again, this wasn't just limited to the Notre Dame Stanford game. Like it happened in the Miami Pitt game as well, and I'm sure it happened in some other games. And I didn't watch all of game day, but there was a lot of stuff going on there as well. There are plenty of things that you can talk about. Like you can talk about Notre Dame's resume as opposed to just the head-to-head win and beat that drum the whole time. Like specific to the playoffs, that's really all they talked about was they kept wanting to come back to the head-to-head win and how you get around. Like you can talk about Notre Dame's resume and what they've done in terms of game control. There are a million different things. I mean, like the fact that there's a guy named Meyer on the roster and they weren't even prepared, and he plays quarterback, and they weren't even prepared for that when he first came in the game. They go to a break. Obviously, someone on the ESPN production crew, and I know that there are at least a couple people who are Notre Dame alums who work in some of those production crews. And, I don't know if maybe one of them was on that particular crew, but maybe they, happened to say, hey, by the way, Charlie out there, that's Rick Meyer's son. Do you know who Rick Meyer is? One of the all-time great Notre Dame quarterbacks, drafted number 2 overall in the NFL draft. That's his son.
Yeah.
And they finally mentioned that.
Maybe talk about that.
Yeah.
Maybe talk about that, And if you're going to talk about the CFP and if you want to talk about the Miami Notre Dame argument, how about you actually use facts and facts that aren't just the ones that other people are spewing? You can have that argument if you want, but how about talk about all of the other things that the committee looks at besides head-to-head? There's other things that they talk about. I don't understand why nobody ever brings that up. Like, if you want to have that argument, do it.
Like the fact that Notre Dame has not just won all these games, but they've won all these games by double figures every time. And this is the second year in a row that they've won 10 games in a row with their backs against the wall to potentially get into the playoffs. Like, where's that, not narrative, but where's that part of the story? Well, because it's a big story to do that, let alone once, but to do it 2 years in a row and to have a chance to get back into the playoffs and sitting in great position. Like, that's a big part of the story that you need to be telling as well.
And here's the other thing. I would imagine, and I didn't listen to them because we were doing our live game watch. My guess, when they were talking about the Miami Notre Dame conversation, the words BYU and Alabama never came up. They probably never brought those two teams up, not once. Right. Even though they're also ranked ahead of Miami, but behind Notre Dame. So Miami needs to leap them as well. Is that going to happen? Can we have that conversation? Or is it only just Miami and Notre Dame? Is that the only part that matters? It's lazy. It's just absolutely lazy.
Bernie says, how about, oh, by the way, Robin said they turned down the TV and listened to the radio, guys. That's the only way to go. Like, that's how I grew up doing it. I wish I had the patience to do it now since there's like the delay on TV and the streaming and all that different kind of stuff. But I wish I had the patience to do it if like I need to figure it out though, because
I do it for women's basketball. So there's that.
Thank you.
Bernie
says, how about talking about how awful Oklahoma looks? Their own fans were booing them for half the game. So with that in mind, scale of 1 to 10, what chance do you give the College Football Playoff Committee to rank Notre Dame ahead of either Oklahoma or Ole Miss in this week's rankings?
Ole Miss is the big question mark for me. Look, they should have ranked Notre Dame ahead of Oklahoma for the past couple of weeks, and they haven't done it. And so on a scale of 1 to 10, I'll give it like a 3. I think there's a chance, but I don't think there's a good chance. I think they'll go chalk, basically. Because as I'm looking at my rankings from last week, right, and you go down and I put a little W or a little L next to every team that won or lost, outside of Texas A&M, every single team all the way down to 14 won their game. They all won,
right?
And so I just feel like it's going to be chalk. We're going to see the same rankings essentially. It's just Ole Miss is the big question mark on what they're going to do there.
That's the big test case, and they're only 3 spots ahead of Notre Dame. How is the committee going to handle this with, like, not just losing the head coach?
Ole Miss is only 2 spots ahead of Notre Dame. They're 7.
Were they 7 last week?
Yeah, because Oregon jumped them after.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
USC.
So I mean, that's even more.
Yeah.
Like, I'm giving this a 4.5 even.
Ooh, he's almost 50-50.
And we're, this again, the question is, will Notre Dame move ahead of either Oklahoma or Ole Miss? And Oklahoma's definitely got a bigger feather in its cap for going out and beating Alabama. Like they've got some nice wins. I'm not going to take anything away from them. They do have a fairly inexplicable lopsided loss, three scores to Texas, who is sitting on the outside looking in right now. And they also lost to Ole Miss, so like they've got the biggest thing in their favor is the feather in their cap from Alabama recently. But when you watch them on the field, man, that offense is tough to watch. It's why LSU still had a chance to win at the end of the game the other night.
LSU was winning, and then it took a almost a prayer, long bomb for Oklahoma to win that game. I mean, it's just LSU decided not to guard them. So yeah, they did not look impressive. Yes, they won the game, but they did not look impressive. And you should, at least there needs to be a discussion.
Notre Dame has the number 4 scoring offense in the nation. Oklahoma's is number 77. When you look at defense, they're closer. Oklahoma has the number 7 scoring defense. Notre Dame is 13. They're both respectable. And again, when you look at where Notre Dame started to where they are right now, the committee's looking at a very good trend in Notre Dame's favor. But that Oklahoma offense, 73 spots behind Notre Dame's offense, and only one spot in the rankings separates them, and they struggled at home against an unbeaten team that fired its head coach in October. I think there's a chance. Ole Miss is the biggest test case, though.
Yes.
Now you've got an unproven coordinator being promoted to head coach. You've got an unproven guy that's going to be leading your team now, even though he's in the building. They promote the defensive coordinator, Golden, but you're losing most of your offensive staff. Like they're following Lane Kiffin down to LSU. And as you said earlier in the show, Vince, like Ole Miss hangs its hat on the offense, and you're losing the biggest strength of your offense in both your head coach and your offensive staff. So I think this is a really interesting case. And I think that there's definitely some wiggle room for Notre Dame to move up a spot or two.
And that's the thing. I think that's what Notre Dame fans in particular are getting hung up on. Like, there's more of a chance, in my opinion, that Notre Dame moves up, not down.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
they're not moving down.
That's what I'm saying. They're not moving down. No.
The only thing that's going to move them down is if those upsets happen next weekend.
Right. And there's a lot of stuff that has to happen. And for that, like Texas Tech beat the snot out of BYU the last time around. Are we really thinking the BYU is going to be able to beat Texas Tech in Texas, by the way, because that game is held at Wally World? Like, do we really think that that's going to happen? I don't. Do we really? Somebody just said in the chat that Georgia is the most dangerous team right now. Well, they play Alabama. No one's talking about Georgia being the most dangerous team because they have to go out and beat Alabama. If they do that, then they're going to have a bye and they're going to be in great shape in the playoff, right? And Notre Dame fans are going to be Georgia fans for a week, and they're going to be Texas Tech fans for a week, and they're going to be Duke fans for a week, We'll see how it all plays out. I just don't see all of those things happening, but you never know.
So someone was just asking in the YouTube chat which coaches are going with Kiffin to LSU. And
I know for a fact Charlie Wise Jr. got on the plane. I believe the wide receiver coach got on the plane.
Right. The strength and conditioning coach, the general manager, they are all going. Obviously, that's not offensive staff, but they are part of it. But there are others, I think, going as well. These are all, none of it has been officially announced, but those are according to the reports that are coming out of LSU land right now.
Yeah. And I think the defensive staff's going to stay because the defensive coordinator, got the head job. So I don't see the defensive side changing a whole lot. But that's the thing about this game. How do you go into a game with nobody on your offensive staff? Who's calling the plays?
Right.
Like, what is that going to look like?
Super chat, scale of 1 to 10, 1 not being worried at all and 10 being very worried. How worried are you Notre Dame is left out of the playoff?
1 not being worried at all, I would say a 2. Because there's a chance that if everything goes a certain way, there's a chance that they get bumped out. I just don't see that being the case. So I'll give it a 2, but it's a very low 2.
That's where I am as well. The doomsday scenario during conference championship weekend is BYU beats Texas Tech, Alabama beats Georgia, and Duke wins the ACC championship because of the fact that, again, it's the 5 highest ranked conference champions. And if Duke loses the conference champion, or if Duke wins the ACC championship, there is a chance that they would not be one of the 5 highest ranked conference champions. And that would open the door for a second group of 5 team to get in.
That would be great.
Those 3 things, like if all 3 of those things happened, I would be very concerned if I'm Notre Dame.
Yeah, for sure. I would say
the 2 biggest are the Alabama beating Georgia and BYU beating Texas Tech. Those are the 2 biggest things. But my concern level is a 2. And if Notre Dame does somehow bump up that 1 extra spot to number 8
then
tomorrow, they're a lock. They're in. You're
not
going to have to sweat next weekend. They will be in.
Yeah, and it's a lock.
Right. I will roll around in the snow in Vince's backyard with just my skivvies on.
Ooh. Come on down.
If otherwise happens. Yeah. Okay. A couple people brought up in the YouTube chat the second non-power conference winner taking the place of the ACC. You're right. It isn't even exchange. It's like I was thinking about the math when I saw that comment in the break, and you're right. That they essentially just take the place of the ACC if a second gets in. So that's still just spots 10 and 11. So it's still. So I take back what I said. It is still just if Alabama beats Georgia in the SEC championship game, BYU beating Texas Tech in the Big 12 championship game. Those are the 2 things that have the most impact on Notre Dame's chances of getting into playoffs.
But like you said, if Notre Dame bumps up to 8 in this particular round, then even if those 2 jump Notre Dame, they're in.
That's right.
They're in. So 8 is a
and
glorious
I don't know
spot.
that it's guaranteed that Texas Tech would stay ahead of Notre Dame if they did lose.
Sure. I don't disagree with that.
But that's still, for next week if that happens.
Right.
I was like Jesse and I were talking about this weekend. I don't think that that's guaranteed that Texas Tech would stay ahead. They're going to have to, they're going to have to lose some seeding for losing that game if that happens.
Because the funny part is, everybody was looking for ways that Notre Dame needs to. Thank you, by the way, Rob and Rudy. Everybody was looking for upsets, so that Notre Dame could move up and all of those different things. The difference between, and none of that happened, right? And everybody's, oh my gosh, nothing that helps Notre Dame happened. It's a travesty. Here's the other thing. Now you want all the favorites to win. So you want chalk at this point. You want Virginia to beat Duke. You want Texas Tech to beat BYU, and you want Georgia to beat Alabama. You want chalk now. So if that happens, you're in great shape if you're Notre Dame. So now you're rooting for chalk. We're no longer rooting for upsets. You're rooting for the favorite to win. So it should be less stressful, in my opinion.
Patrick has a super chat that's been sitting in here for a while. He says Miami's in a 4-way tie for second place in the ACC. They lost to one of those teams, SMU, which means at best they would be 3rd, but they also lost to the 7th place team, Louisville. That would put them 5th head-to-head.
The ACC does all kinds of weird ways to do tiebreakers and figure.
Well, see, here's the thing. Here's the thing. Do I even have this? So Duke's 8 ACC opponents had the best combined record in league games. That's the tiebreaker that it went to. It went to the 5th tiebreaker to break this 5-way tie for second place that Miami was part of. It was the 5th tiebreaker criteria. So like Nicole Arbach on NBC Sports was saying, well, the ACC should have just overridden the tiebreaker rules and put Miami in the conference championship game over 5-loss Duke. Well, one, I don't think your conference should just change the rules midstream, as the season's going on, because it doesn't suit what you want right now. I think if you want to change the rule going forward next year and you have a tie like this, you can just say the highest ranked team in the college football playoff rankings gets that spot because we want the best teams in the conference championship game. It's not that hard. Just change your criteria, but change your criteria going forward. You can't do it right now. I don't think. Do you?
No, not in the middle. You can't just change your rules willy-nilly. So that's not going to happen.
But, the other thing is if you're going to play a conference schedule with 17 teams and no divisions, so teams aren't playing everyone like the ACC is doing, which is why you had 5 teams ending up tied to begin with, seems like you would change the rule going forward.
Maybe going forward, but they're not going to change
Right.
it midstream.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think you can do it now. By the way, our old friend Penn State Sports Talk says we are bowl eligible. Congrats. Congrats, Penn State. Looking like they might get Kalani Sitake.
Is that a good hire?
I don't know.
Feels
like they've really had to settle in all this after being
Man.
the first high-profile team to jettison a coach who's won double-digit games every year.
Probably just should have stuck with James Franklin, to be perfectly honest with you, if
Feels
that's
like
who you're going to bring in. And it's nothing against Coach Sitake. It is, I don't know that he is going to flourish at Penn State. That is a completely different job than BYU.
Different neighborhood.
Oh, completely different.
ND Forever 72 says we're being way too optimistic about Notre Dame in the playoff. Now, maybe there's just a chance, ND Forever 72, that you're a little bit pessimistic.
Yeah,
on this. Maybe
I'm going to throw the pessimistic label out there.
Because it's really, again, at this point, it's really just math, and in terms of where Notre Dame shows up. Like, do you really think that Miami is going to pass Notre Dame this week? All of a sudden, when the playoff committee has been very consistently putting behind Notre Dame. Right.
I mean, Vegas seems to think it's a pretty good chance that Notre Dame gets in. Last time I checked, right?
Yep. Well, we didn't get to the Lane Kiffin stuff tonight. I guess it's just as well because Jesse loves him some Lane Kiffin. He likes to talk about Lane Kiffin. I'll be curious to see what he thinks about Mr. Kiffin tomorrow. Great stuff, Vince. Enjoyed it as always.
Fast.
I will talk to you again soon. We'll be back on tomorrow's show. Great stuff. Appreciate you joining us live both on the radio and on YouTube and the chat. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com.